What began as a routine live broadcast quickly erupted into a clash of ideals. Under the glowing lights of a high-profile Los Angeles studio, Hollywood heavyweight Tom Cruise strutted across the stage with his trademark charm, radiating the effortless confidence of a man used to applause. But the night took a sharp turn when he made a mocking jab at his guest, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. Cruise, dressed in a sleek black suit and riding high on charisma, greeted viewers with his usual flair. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's show," he said with practiced ease. "And joining us, a special guest from the White House." The camera cut to Karoline Leavitt, poised and composed in a crisp navy suit. Around her neck gleamed a silver cross, subtle yet unmistakable, a symbol of unshaken faith. Cruise couldn't resist a dig. "Well, look at that," he smirked. "Wearing a cross like she's Joan of Arc. This is Hollywood, not a revival tent." The audience burst into a mix of laughter and murmurs. Some clapped. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Karoline didn't flinch. She turned, her eyes steady and sharp, locking on to Cruise with quiet intensity. Under the lights, the cross around her neck caught fire, figuratively and visually, becoming more than an accessory. In that moment, it became a statement. With measured calm and moral clarity, Leavitt didn't just defend her faith, she flipped the script. She took Cruise's smug theater and transformed it into a national moment of reckoning. What followed wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a cultural call-out. She exposed the hypocrisy, challenged the celebrity-driven echo chamber, and spoke directly to millions watching, those tired of condescension wrapped in comedy. The segment lit up social media. Clips spread like wildfire. Commentators, both left and right, weighed in. Some called it a PR masterstroke. Others said it signaled a larger shift in the cultural landscape. But one thing was clear: Karoline Leavitt didn't just hold her ground, she redefined it. In a showdown between Hollywood snark and unshakable conviction, it was the woman with the silver cross who walked away not only unscathed, but celebrated. And in doing so, she didn't just silence a critic, she carved a moment into political and pop culture history. The stage was set for entertainment, but what unfolded was a reckoning. As the lights dimmed and the cameras rolled, Karoline Leavitt turned to Tom Cruise with a gaze that cut through the air like steel. Her voice, calm yet commanding, broke the silence like a blade. "Tom," she began, "you mock this cross, a symbol that's carried generations through war, grief, and despair. You call it a prop. But let me tell you what it really is." A hush fell across the studio. "This cross belonged to my grandmother. She clutched it through bomb raids, widowhood, and loss, praying for a future she might never see. It's not jewelry. It's not politics. It's legacy. It's faith when everything else is gone." The audience was transfixed. Some nodded silently, others dabbed at their eyes. Tom Cruise shifted uneasily, his usual charisma starting to unravel. "Come on, Karoline," he interrupted with a nervous smile, trying to regain control. "This is a talk show, not Sunday Mass. You're just playing the saint card for applause, aren't you?" His sarcasm only sharpened her resolve. She stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "You live in a world of makeup and movie scripts, Tom. You play heroes. I live among them. Real battles aren't staged, they're survived. This cross isn't for show. It's a reminder that some of us still fight for what's true, even when no one's watching." The studio tensed. Cruise tried to backpedal. "Look, I respect all beliefs, okay? But let's keep things light." The crowd wasn't having it. Boos erupted from one side, claps from the other. Karoline didn't flinch. "Light? There's nothing light about ridiculing someone's beliefs. You think you can laugh off faith like it's a punchline." She fired back, voice rising with conviction. "This isn't a costume. It's a vow. To speak truth, even when it shakes the room." The silver cross around her neck gleamed like a flare under the lights. The audience exploded, cheering, standing, clapping. Cruise's confident mask was slipping fast. And then, the moment that turned the night from unforgettable to unstoppable. Karoline reached into her pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. Holding it high, she declared, "You want truth, Tom? Here's truth, documented, time-stamped, and undeniable." The crowd leaned in. "These are emails from your own team. In 2019, you pulled out of a veteran charity gala. Hundreds of military families left disappointed. Why? Because your rep called it too conservative for Tom's brand." Gasps rippled through the room. Behind her, a massive screen lit up with the actual email. Leavitt read the message word for word. "This event is off-brand for Tom. Politically risky. Decline politely." That's your truth, Tom. You ditched heroes for Hollywood image control. Cruz stood frozen, face pale, struggling to respond. That was old, out of context. I had a full schedule, he stammered, but the strength had left his voice. He sounded less like a seasoned star and more like a man cornered by reality. Karoline didn't need to say another word. The audience had made up their minds. Her silence spoke louder than any speech. Cameras flashed. Social media exploded. Headlines began writing themselves. In the end, Karoline Leavitt hadn't just defended her faith. She'd exposed a double standard, shattered a Hollywood ego, and left a silver cross burning like a beacon on a stage that was never meant to welcome it. She didn't just win the moment. She rewrote the rules. The studio crackled with tension as jeers erupted from the crowd, whistles sharp as knives in the air. Karoline Leavitt stepped forward, her stare cutting clean through the noise, cold, unwavering, and deadly calm. "Busy schedule?" she asked, her voice low but frosted with steel. "Or did you choose your image over your integrity?" Her words sliced the silence like glass. "Let's be honest, Tom. You didn't just miss a date. You turned your back on those who needed you most. And now you want to talk about honesty?" She turned to the crowd, her posture regal, her voice rising with righteous clarity. "Truth doesn't need camera angles or applause. It's the veteran family sitting in silence, waiting for a promise that never came. That's who this is for. I'm not here to shine up my name. I'm here to unearth the truth you buried under red carpets and bright lights." The audience exploded, standing, roaring, clapping like a wave crashing through the studio. Tom Cruise, no longer the master of the moment, staggered back a step. His polished persona faltered, replaced by a man cornered. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he muttered, almost to himself. But no one was listening anymore. On the massive screen behind them, the incriminating email still hovered like a guilty verdict, every word a scar. Backstage, producers barked into headsets, desperate to regain control. But Karoline stood unmoved. The silver cross at her throat glowed under the lights like a beacon forged from conviction. And then she did what no one expected. She looked straight into the camera. "Truth isn't always comfortable," she said, her voice calm but filled with unshakable resolve. "But it never hides. And it never stays silent." She raised the USB stick, its shape now a symbol of reckoning. "Sue me if you want, Tom. But you can't sue the truth." A beat. Then she held the USB higher. "This is your reminder. What's done in the dark will always come into the light." The crowd roared. Phones shot into the air. Social media lit up in real time, recording a moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and remembered. Cruise stood at the edge of the stage, a ghost of the man who had opened the show with swagger. He looked hollow now, defeated, silenced by a woman he had underestimated. Karoline remained still, her eyes forward, her cross shining like an eternal flame. She hadn't just defended her faith, she had ignited a movement. What was meant to be a talk show segment had transformed into a cultural fault line, and the aftershocks would be felt far beyond Hollywood. Then Cruise, desperate for ground, lunged for the mic one last time. "Who do you think you are, Karoline?" he snapped, his voice trembling with forced authority. "You're a politician, not a prophet. You came here just to stir up trouble. Hollywood doesn't need your sermons." Karoline turned to him, calm but fierce, her voice a slow, precise blade. "No, Tom. I'm not here to stir trouble. I'm here to challenge something far bigger than you." She turned back to the audience, her words now a drumbeat in their ears. "This is about a culture where truth is mocked, where faith is dismissed, where values are twisted into punchlines. That's your bubble, Tom. Hollywood's bubble. But outside of these walls, faith matters. Truth matters. People matter." She paused, letting silence do what applause could not, make it sacred. "And I won't let that be ridiculed anymore." The audience, breathless, stood once more, clapping, shouting, and raising their phones to record not a segment, but a statement. A new voice had risen in the place least expected, and it had just burned through the script. "That bubble has burst," Karoline declared, and the audience erupted. Applause thundered through the studio like a wave crashing on a brittle shore. Tom Cruise took a step back, eyes wide, rattled by the roar. "You don't understand Hollywood," he shouted over the crowd, but his voice was lost beneath a storm of cheers. Karoline raised her hand. The room hushed, as if the air itself was listening. Her voice rose, calm but crackling with fire. "I understand more than enough, Tom. Enough to know Hollywood isn't America. You make movies to sell dreams, but when those dreams are built on faith, family, or sacrifice, you scoff and look away. That's the truth." She turned to the camera, her cross catching the light, her words a direct hit. You, Tom, have become the face of that arrogance, mocking what millions hold sacred just because it doesn't fit your brand. The camera panned across the audience, some stunned, some weeping, many raising phones, capturing every second. On Instagram and TikTok, clips began to surge in real time. Karoline's right. Hollywood's out of touch, one post read. Another simply said, she shattered the illusion. Tom Cruise, looking more like a man stranded than a star, tried to push back. You're slandering an entire industry, he snapped. Hollywood brings joy. Art. You don't get to judge that. Karoline didn't blink. Joy? Art? She echoed, stepping forward. When will Hollywood stop mocking what it doesn't understand? When will it stop pampering egos long enough to honor the values that built this country? The studio stood still as lightning. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to hold accountable. There's a difference. An older man in the back stood up, clapping with tears in his eyes. Others followed, standing, cheering, clapping until the walls shook. The noise swallowed Cruise's next words whole. Then, Karoline turned once more to the lens. I'm not here to destroy Hollywood, she said, her voice as steady as stone. I'm here to remind it that true art uplifts. It doesn't trample faith, or truth, or dignity. You've got the power to inspire. So why keep choosing mockery? The crowd answered with a standing ovation. Online, her words became a rallying cry. College students filmed banners reading, Karoline speaks for us. Mothers in rural towns posted videos saying, she stood up when no one else would. A movement was brewing, one clip, one quote, one truth at a time. Backstage, producers scrambled. Cut the stream, one barked into a headset. But it was too late. The world was already watching. Cruise stood dazed in the corner of the stage, microphone slipping from his hand, hitting the floor with a hollow clack. The sound triggered laughter, sharp and final. Karoline, unshaken in the eye of the storm, stepped into the spotlight. Hollywood can write stories, she said. But the real story, of faith, truth, and courage, is written every day by the people you've forgotten. She touched her cross, the silver gleaming like fire. I'm not here to defeat you, Tom. I'm here to win for them. Applause cracked like thunder. Viewers online called her Queen Karoline. A journalist tweeted, Karoline Leavitt didn't just face off with Cruise. She flipped the cultural script. Cruise tried to regain ground, voice shaky but defiant. Who are you to judge Hollywood? You're an outsider looking to make trouble. Karoline smiled, ice in her eyes. You want to talk about contributions, she said. Let's talk about those who really give, veterans who've lost brothers, mothers praying at ICU beds, families clinging to crosses while you joke about props. They don't need a spotlight, but they do deserve respect. The audience fell silent. One by one, people placed hands over their hearts. Cruise tried again. I've always supported the military, he barked. Don't twist this. But Karoline stepped forward, every word now a hammer. Support? You bailed on a veterans charity for image. You laughed at their faith. What have you sacrificed, Tom, besides your ego? The studio gasped. Cruise, frantic, tried to speak. You're slandering me. I've done charity work, but his words collapsed under jeering whistles. Karoline took her final step. Fame isn't virtue, Tom. Good PR isn't sacrifice. And charity with cameras isn't compassion. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to defend those who serve without applause, without followers, without million-dollar deals. And with that, the audience roared. Applause, cheers, phones in the air, an eruption not for scandal, but for truth. Karoline stood tall, her cross shining like a torch. In that moment, she wasn't just confronting Cruise. She was challenging an empire. She turned to the audience, her voice rising like a storm front sweeping across the world. Service isn't acting. Sacrifice isn't a role. Her words rang like steel in a silent hall. I've met soldiers who returned home carrying scars on their bodies, in their hearts. Some found strength in a cross, in faith. They don't want fame. They don't ask for glory. They just want to be seen, to be honored. And you, Tom, mocked them instead. She gently touched the silver cross around her neck, a quiet but unshakable declaration. That's why I'm here. And I won't let you turn their sacrifice into entertainment. The audience rose in an uproar. Thunderous applause erupted, threatening to shake the walls. A woman in the front row held up a cross of her own, tears streaking her cheeks. On Instagram, live streams surged with captions like, Karoline is our warrior. She didn't just defeat Cruise. She spoke for us all. Backstage, chaos spread like wildfire. "We need to cut the feed," a producer shouted into a headset. But it was too late. The live stream was still running, and the world was watching. Tom Cruise, now visibly shaken, drifted to the edge of the stage like a man searching for an exit that wasn't there. His mouth opened, but his voice barely surfaced, a fading whisper lost in the roar of consequence. The audience burst into laughter, not out of joy, but like a final note in the symphony of his unraveling pride. Karoline stood unshaken in the eye of the storm. The lights bathed her like moonlight over a battlefield. She looked straight into the lens, her expression calm, voice gentle but resonant, like a bell in a quiet cathedral. "Tom, I didn't come here to tear you down," she said. "I came to remind you, and everyone watching, of the people we too often forget. The ones who serve silently, who sacrifice daily so we can argue freely under these lights." She slowly raised her cross. Its silver gleam wasn't just metal, it was memory. It was honor. It was a vow. "This is my promise," she continued, "to stand for faith, for service, for those who never get a spotlight. Even if Hollywood never claps, I will." The crowd responded with a roar, signs raised, chants echoed. "Karoline for truth. She's the light in the dark." Social media exploded. Comments poured in by the second. "A new icon was born tonight. Cruise has nothing left." Karoline Leavitt just turned a talk show into a call for justice. And on that stage, the once untouchable Tom Cruise stood bowed and silent. No applause. No spotlight. Just the image of a man finally brought face to face with his own blind spots. His voice cracked as he looked up at Karoline. "You win," he said, quietly. "I didn't mean to offend anyone." But whether his apology was genuine or just damage control, it was too late. The crowd's silence wasn't forgiveness, it was judgment. Their anger wasn't at a joke, it was at the arrogance behind it. Karoline said nothing. Her eyes locked with his, not in triumph, but in truth. Calm. Steady. Unbreakable. The camera lingered, capturing the stillness between them. Then faded to black. The next morning, one clip went viral across every platform. Tom Cruise bowing his head. Karoline Leavitt standing tall. Cross gleaming. Unshaken. Undefeated. But the story didn't end there. Because something unexpected happened backstage. A producer rushed to the stage, whispering into Tom Cruise's ear. He nodded, grasping at what looked like a final thread of redemption. Returning to the mic, his voice softened, tinged with remorse, or at least the attempt. "If my words hurt anyone, I'm sorry," he said. "That wasn't my intent. Let's end tonight with kindness. No applause. No booing either. Just silence, not the silence of indifference, but the silence of awakening." His words dropped like a pebble into a vast lake, rippling, but not enough to move anything. Then came the whispers. Then the snickers. Too late, someone called out. Social media instantly lit up in brutal fashion. Scripted apology. Worst damage control ever. The video of Cruise's apology, uploaded just minutes later, barely scratched the surface, garnering a few thousand views buried under a mountain of dislikes and cutting comments. Karoline had won, but she hadn't even raised her voice to do it. She stepped to the center of the stage, poised and clear-eyed, her presence commanding without force. Her voice was soft, yet sharp as a blade cutting through fog. "Tom, apologies aren't performances. They're acknowledgments of pain. They don't come from a script. They come from the soul." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "But I'm not here for your apology. I'm here to remind this world that truth doesn't need Hollywood's approval to shine." Cruise, now a ghost of the icon he once was, faded into the wings, eyes hollow. He hadn't just lost a debate. He had lost the moment, the respect, the narrative, and the world noticed. Within hours, the fallout hit. Paramount delayed the next Mission Impossible. Major sponsors quietly pulled out. Variety ran a headline that read, "Cruise bets big, loses bigger, Leavitt rewrites the rules." Social media didn't just react, it exploded. A viral tweet summed it up. Karoline didn't just win. She reset the game. Backstage, in a quiet hallway away from the chaos, Karoline stood alone before a mirror. She touched the silver cross around her neck and whispered to herself, "This is for them, the ones no one hears." She didn't need the lights. She didn't need the fame. She had fought for the forgotten, and the world had seen it. Journalists from CNN to Fox News dubbed it the Karoline Storm. A mother wrote online, "My son died for this country. Karoline made me believe it wasn't in vain." A college student posted, "She's not just politics. She's conviction. She's fire." Meanwhile, Cruise vanished. No posts. No interviews. The Hollywood Reporter published a blistering piece. Cruise didn't lose because Karoline was louder. He lost because she was right. Karoline left the stage not with triumph in her voice, but with purpose in her eyes. The silver cross on her chest had become more than jewelry. It was now a symbol of truth, sacrifice, and a rising movement. Weeks later, Karoline stepped onto a new stage, this time in Washington, D.C. She had been invited as keynote speaker for the National Religious Conference. Over 20,000 people filled the arena: pastors, students, veterans, everyday citizens. The lights dimmed. Cameras rolled. YouTube's live stream reached millions across the globe. She appeared in a Navy suit, her silver cross catching the light like a flame in the dark. The audience rose as one, applause rolling like thunder. She took the microphone, her voice calm but commanding, like a river cutting through stone. "I'm not here to speak of victory," she began. "I'm here to speak of those who inspired it." Her eyes scanned the crowd. Soldiers, families, believers holding on to light in the darkest moments. "This cross," she said, touching it gently, "isn't just mine. It belongs to every person whose faith was mocked, whose sacrifice went unseen." And yet, they stood strong. A hush swept over the hall. Then applause burst again, louder, longer, full of emotion. Some cried. Some raised crosses. Some simply held each other's hands. Karoline raised her hand, calling for stillness. "Today, I'm announcing the launch of the Cross Fund, an initiative to support our forgotten veterans, their families, and all those who find strength and faith." The crowd leapt to its feet again, cheers shaking the building. People wept. Some knelt in prayer. Others held signs that read, "She's our voice. Karoline for courage. Faith over fame." And Karoline stood there, not as a politician, but as something more. A messenger. A movement. A moment that couldn't be silenced. "This fund isn't about me," Karoline said, her voice steady and clear. "It's a promise that no one will be forgotten. Not one soldier. Not one family. Not one belief." She shared the story of a veteran she had met, someone who clutched a cross every day, not for show, but for strength. "He doesn't want fame," she said, her tone gentle but resolute. "He just wants someone to listen. And I promise, I will." Her words swept through the hall like light through stained glass, touching hearts one by one. As she neared the end of her speech, her voice softened but carried the weight of conviction. "We don't need spotlights to shine. We just need to stand for truth, for one another, for what's right." She raised her silver cross, its gleam reflecting the values she carried. "Together, we will build a world where faith and sacrifice are honored." The crowd rose to its feet. Applause thundered for over 5 minutes. Tears streamed freely. Many stood weeping, moved by a message that felt more like a calling than a speech. But the impact didn't stop at the conference. News outlets across the spectrum lit up. Fox News declared, "Karoline Leavitt, from stage to legacy." CNN called her the game changer. The Washington Post wrote, "She didn't just confront Cruise. She sparked a national movement." On X, one journalist tweeted, "The Cross Fund proves Karoline fights for people, not for fame." Back in her White House office, Karoline stood by the window, sunlight dancing off her cross. She whispered, barely audible even to herself, "This is just the beginning." She wasn't chasing headlines. She was chasing change. And that change was already taking root. The Cross Fund, officially launched days later, began offering scholarships, counseling, and support programs to veteran families. Tangible help rooted in the very faith she had defended under the harshest spotlight. A veteran who benefited posted a video, "Karoline gave me a reason to keep going." A grieving mother shared, "Because of her, my son is remembered." What started as a televised confrontation had become something more, a bridge for the forgotten, connecting them to a world that finally listened. On YouTube, a powerful video compilation chronicling Karoline's journey from the Cruise interview to the national stage reached 15 million views, titled, "Karoline Leavitt, The Legacy of Truth." Cruise, once a Hollywood titan, had all but disappeared. His apology, weak and too late, had been drowned out by a storm of criticism. Paramount quietly canceled promotional deals. New projects stalled. The Hollywood Reporter headlined, "Cruise didn't lose because Karoline was louder. He lost because she was right." A viral comment on YouTube summed it up perfectly. Tom Cruise didn't just lose a debate. Karoline turned him into a warning. Meanwhile, Karoline's influence only grew. She didn't boast. She didn't gloat. She stood firm, calm, always anchored by something deeper. In another quiet moment back at the White House, she stood once again at her window, hand over her cross. She wasn't thinking of headlines or history books. She was thinking of a soldier, a praying mother, the unseen and unheard. "I didn't do this for me," she whispered. "I did it for them." The Cross Fund continued to expand, offering not just aid, but hope. And the world kept watching. Fox News called her the flame of justice. CNN, Karoline Leavitt turned confrontation into conviction. The New York Times wrote, "She didn't just challenge Hollywood. She challenged us all to live more truthfully." Another video, this one documenting her full journey, from the stage lights of Los Angeles to the spotlight of national leadership, hit 50 million views, captioned, "Karoline Leavitt, the woman who changed everything." She didn't need a script. She didn't need a brand. All she needed was a cross, a voice, and a mission. And the world finally listened. They were the reason she stood up. And they became the legacy she left behind. Back at her desk, Karoline opened her laptop, her inbox flooded with messages from around the world. A pastor thanked her for defending faith. A college student shared how her words inspired them to pursue a life grounded in truth. One message read simply, "Karoline, you made me believe one person can still change the world." She smiled, not out of pride, but with quiet reverence. The fire she had lit on one stage had become a flame carried across continents. On Instagram, a post read, "Karoline didn't just win. She paved the way for all of us." In the final scene, she stepped out of her office. Sunlight struck her silver cross, turning it into a gleaming beacon. The camera slowly pulled back, framing her not as a political figure, but as a woman who reshaped how the world saw truth. Her voice echoed, soft, certain, eternal. Truth doesn't need a spotlight to shine. It only needs someone willing to stand for it. As the screen faded to black, the final words appeared, "Karoline Leavitt, the legacy of faith and truth." But her work didn't stop there. The Cross Fund kept growing, reaching farther and deeper. Stories poured in, of veterans in rural towns receiving scholarships, of families finding healing, of faith restored in hearts once hardened by silence. A viral comment said it best, "She didn't just defeat Cruz. She defeated apathy." Karoline's legacy was never about a single confrontation. It wasn't about winning a moment, it was about reviving hope. With her cross and her conviction, she proved one voice can move millions, not with power, but with truth. More than a story, a reflection of our times, the story of Karoline Leavitt standing up to Tom Cruise on live television echoed far beyond the studio lights. It tapped into something deeper, something that reflects the cultural divide in today's America. Where faith is often mocked, where truth is politicized, and where values seem negotiable, Karoline chose a different path. Armed not with celebrity, but with sincerity, not with fame, but with facts, she confronted a powerful figure and exposed hypocrisy, not through outrage, but through integrity. The Cross 19 documents, her symbolic cross, and her unwavering voice reminded the world that conviction still matters, and that courage paired with truth can shake even the most polished stage. Real lessons for a divided nation in a time where social media inflames rather than informs, and debates dissolve into noise. Karoline's story offers real lessons. Speak with sincerity, not sarcasm. Back your beliefs with truth, not trends. Create impact not through volume, but through values. Turn speeches into service, like Karoline did with the Cross Fund. In a polarized world, respect remains a radical act. And listening, without mocking, is a power greater than any applause. Karoline Leavitt reminded us that anyone can build a legacy as long as they stand for something greater than themselves. She didn't chase history. She became it. Thank you for following the journey of Karoline Leavitt. To hear more stories that shine a light on truth, courage, and faith, subscribe now. Let's keep standing. Let's keep believing. And most of all, let's keep the truth burning bright.